I shivered in spite of the heat from the growing fire. As I looked at Bo flipping through the small book, I found myself becoming angry. "Did you know about this?" I demanded. "Is that why you bought this place?" He looked up at me, eyes wide. "Not a clue. Just a happy coincidence, I guess. Or maybe OlGooGoo had something to do with it, somehow. I mean, he must have, right, because otherwise what are the odds? And this wasn't even the last owners. These entries are from the 1730s. That would mean that in addition to being a prophet of OlGooGoo, whoever wrote this journal was the original owner of OlGooGoo. This is so cool." I asked the realtor about the history of the place, but she didn't know the history this far back. "Hey, Bobby, look what Liv found." Bo ran off towards the stairs to find his partner, leaving me standing alone next to the ancient fireplace. Despite his insistence that it was coincidence, I couldn't help but feel betrayed. No matter what I did, I could never get away. The cult surrounded me, even more so when Bo became a prophet, and the closer I came to my 30th birthday, the more it tried to pull me under completely. The others seemed so at ease, so natural with their choices. Bianca had her special connections, Bo his history, and even Xander seemed at peace, already marrying and providing his own successor in the Pike family. Not a single one of them seemed hesitant, none questioning who we served or why. Why was it so hard for me? Why was I the only one who could see things how they really were? Even 5,000 miles from home, I couldn't escape OlGooGoo. I reached my hand out and absently ran it over the stone hearth again, listening to the crackling of the fire and the din of Bo's chatter upstairs. I sorted through my emotions and recognized that on top of the dread and betrayal, I was also disappointed. It felt silly now, but when I kicked the stone aside and first noticed my discovery, the angelic voice still echoing in my head, I had hoped that it was something new, something meant for me, something that would save me, somehow. Learning that it was just more of the same, another glaring sign that my life did not belong to me, was soul-crushing. I didn't hear the singing again, but now that I'd found the journal, I wondered if it was connected to OlGooGoo as well. If it was, I hoped it was gone for good. I wasn't interested in pursuing my own deeper connection to the ancient ones. I was only interested in ways to sever that connection for good. I heard footsteps approaching down the stairs, coming to a stop behind me, and I jumped as I turned around, startled by the tall form looming over me. For a brief moment, I thought I saw the shadow of horns and wings, but I quickly realized that it was just Bo's partner, harmless, quiet, inhumanly tall Bobby. There was no denying that I was short at maybe an inch over 5 feet tall. Bianca was almost a foot taller than me. Bo even had 6 inches on me, and everyone was constantly remarking on how short he was. But even if I had been a little less fun-sized, I still wouldn't be able to use any word to describe Bobby other than tall. OlGooGoo usually appeared to us standing at an impressive 7 feet or so, and Bobby was only a couple of inches below that. I had never met anyone as tall as them, and it was enough that they got comments from strangers on a semi-regular basis. So while I felt a little foolish that I thought they were OlGooGoo when I first turned around, it wasn't like I was completely lost in my paranoia. There was a resemblance, albeit a tiny one. "He's up there speaking a mixture of German and the old tongue, and he's no longer listening to reason," Bobby said, glancing at the ceiling as if they could see Bo beyond the rafters. "I think he was going to guide us into town to get some groceries, but it might be a lost cause now. Do you think we should try to go it alone?" I looked at them steadily. Bobby and Bo had been together for 10 years or so, and for almost half of that they'd lived in Washington, only a couple hours away from me. I had no excuse, but I had never gotten to know Bobby very well. They were good to Bo, and he loved them tremendously, and that was all I ever needed to know. This was perhaps the first time we had been alone together, and we were rapidly approaching the record for most words exchanged. "Do you speak German?" I asked them. Spaghetti." They grinned, imitating one of the titular characters from a 90s cartoon that I was a little too young to really remember. They shrugged. "Doesn't everyone speak English anyway?" Out in this little town. I kind of doubt it, I replied, frowning. I was just starting to warm up with the fire, and going back out into the snow didn't seem very appealing. Still, my stomach was empty, and we would have to get some food one way or another. Bobby extended their hand, a glint in their eye. Come on. I've got euros. Even if my words aren't any good, my money will be. I laughed in spite of myself, enjoying a glimpse of why Bo loved Bobby so much, and put my hand in theirs. We bundled up again and took off down the snowy street back into Hofstetten. It was only about a mile or 1.5 kilometers. Bo would have corrected us if he had come, and despite the cold, it wasn't unpleasant. The air was crisp and fresh, and the German countryside was beautiful, the little town charming. We walked in silence, which I didn't mind. Bobby had always been quiet, and I didn't trust my own words much anyway. We stopped at the little market and picked some meat and vegetables, then made our way to the bakery. While Bobby inspected pastries, pointing through the glass and gesturing to get past the language barrier, I noticed that we were being given a particularly wide berth, and a few villagers whispered to each other while they pointed and glanced nervously in our direction. I mentioned it to Bobby as they joined me again, their hands full of bread and pastries, but they just shrugged. I'm tall, they said simply. I shook my head, watching two women whispering as we walked past them. I heard the words Geist and Spuckhaus, and while I didn't speak German, I had a pretty good idea of what they meant. No, I told Bobby, this is something else. Did the realtor say anything odd about the house when you bought it? The whole conversation was in German. I just stood there looking stupid. But I think Bo would have told me anything worth mentioning. He would have told everyone, whether they wanted to hear or not. I frowned as we made our way back out of town and down the path to Erdbeerhöschen. If the book I found was as old as Bo said, it seemed unlikely that the townspeople knew about it. I had a feeling there was more to Erdbeerhöschen than we knew, and it wasn't just about OlGooGoo. I looked up at the charming little cottage as we approached. It had a fairy tale magic about it, but that was surely just the German architecture. However, as my eyes scanned the small house, I noticed a glint in an upstairs window. I stopped, focusing more closely, and realized that the glint was the blonde hair of a young woman shining in the late afternoon sun. She sat in the window, looking out forlornly, and as her eyes met mine, her lips parted, and I swore I could hear the angelic singing once again. Olivia? Bobby asked, turning back to look at me as they stood in the open doorway. Are you coming? I looked at them and nodded, smiling tightly, unsure of what to tell them about the intruder in their new abode. When I looked at the upstairs window again, the woman was gone.